The dust swirled thick in Red Butte's town square as a woman stood on the auction block, not for debt, not for crime, but for the unforgivable sin of wearing trousers. The crowd jeered, calling her unnatural and shameful, their voices a chorus of cruelty under the brutal Arizona sun. But then a voice cut through the noise like a blade. $200. The mob fell silent. A tall rancher stepped forward, his jaw set with quiet fury. He met her defiant eyes and said words that would echo through the territory. "With me, she wears what she wants." What happened next would challenge everything this frontier town believed about power, freedom, and what it truly means to stand beside someone rather than over them. Stay with me until the end of this story and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale of courage travels. Red Butte, Arizona Territory, August 1878. The sun beat down on the wooden platform like the judgment of an angry god, and Eliza Hart stood at its center with her chin raised and her hands bound behind her back. Sweat trickled down her spine beneath the chambray workshirt she'd been condemned for wearing, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. The rope chafed her wrists, rough hemp burning against skin already raw from 3 days in the town jail's holding cell. $50, someone shouted from the crowd, and ugly laughter rippled through the gathered townspeople like a disease. Mayor Abernathy stood beside her on the platform, his florid face gleaming with perspiration and self-righteousness. He raised his gavel, playing to the crowd with the practiced ease of a man who'd found his calling in other people's humiliation. $50 for this? This woman who thinks herself above the natural order. $50 to teach her proper feminine conduct. Eliza's jaw tightened. The natural order. As if wearing practical clothing while keeping books and managing accounts was somehow an affront to creation itself. She'd heard it all before from her cousin Gerald in Boston, who'd tried to force her into corsets and compliance from the boarding house mistress in Santa Fe, who'd turned her out for improper attire, and now from this sweating politician who seemed to think a woman's clothing choices were somehow his concern. 60. Another voice thick with drink and suggestion. She scanned the crowd, looking for any friendly face among the sea of judgment. There were a few averted eyes, people who knew this was wrong, but lacked the courage to say so. Mrs. Chen from the general store, who'd always been kind. Old Sam, the blacksmith, who looked distinctly so uncomfortable. But they were silent, and silence in the face of injustice was just another form of consent. 75. A man near the front licked his lips, and Eliza's stomach turned. She recognized him, Silas Crowell, owner of the Golden Spur Saloon, a man whose eyes had always lingered too long when she'd come to town for supplies. His smile was thin and calculating, the expression of someone who saw opportunity in another's suffering. The crowd was growing more animated now, feeding off each other's energy. Someone threw a rotted tomato that splattered near her feet, and the mayor didn't even pretend to call for order. This wasn't about justice or propriety, it had never been. This was about power, about putting an uppity woman in her place, about men who felt threatened by the very idea that a woman might choose function over their fragile sensibilities. $100, Silas called out, stepping closer to the platform. I'll teach her proper ways soon enough. The innuendo in his tone sent a wave of revulsion through Eliza. Her eyes blazed with defiance even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd escaped one cage in Boston only to find herself in another here in the territory. Her uncle had warned her the frontier was different, he'd said, but it wasn't necessarily more free, just free in different ways for different people. 100 going once. Mayor Abernathy seemed pleased with how the spectacle was unfolding. Eliza's mind raced. She'd hidden $30 in her boot sewn into the leather lining, enough for a stage ticket maybe, if she could somehow get free. Her Winchester was in the sheriff's office, confiscated as evidence of her masculine aberration, as if owning a rifle was somehow proof of moral failing. She needed that rifle, She needed her freedom. She needed $200. The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep and calm, cutting through the chaos like a church bell on Sunday morning. The jeering stopped, heads turned. Even Mayor Abernathy paused mid-swing with his gavel. Eliza couldn't see who'd spoken, too many people in the way. But the crowd was parting now, and through the gap came a man she'd never seen before. Tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders that spoke of hard work rather than idle posturing. He wore a dusty brown Stetson, a plain cotton shirt, and work-worn denim. His face was sun-weathered, probably early 30s, with a strong jaw and eyes the color of creek water, gray-green, and utterly unreadable. He walked with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need announcement. No swagger, no show, just steady purpose boots hitting the packed dirt with measured steps. The crowd instinctively moved aside for him, and Eliza found herself holding her breath, without knowing why. $200, he repeated, stopping at the base of the platform and looking up at Mayor Abernathy. His voice was level, almost conversational, but there was something beneath it, something that suggested this was not a man to trifle with. I believe that exceeds the current bid. Silas Crowell's face darkened. Now hold on, just 200, the stranger said again, not even glancing at Silas. His eyes were fixed on the mayor. Cash, right now. Mayor Abernathy's expression flickered between greed and uncertainty. $200 was a fortune, more than triple what anyone had expected this auction to bring. But there was something in the stranger's bearing that suggested complications ahead. Well, that is to say, the mayor cleared his throat. Might we know who's making such a generous offer? Cole Rourke, Triple Bar Ranch, 15 miles northwest. He was already pulling bills from his pocket, counting them out with practiced efficiency. $200 for the woman's freedom. That's what this is, isn't it? A sale. The way he said sale carried just enough edge to make it clear what he thought of the proceedings, but his face remained neutral. Eliza watched him, trying to understand his game. Men didn't spend $200 without expecting something in return, and she'd learned long ago that kindness from strangers often came with strings attached, strings that could strangle you if you weren't careful. Mr. Rourke, Mayor Abernathy blustered, this is a matter of community standards of teaching proper. $200. Cole interrupted, his voice harder now. You've set a price on a human being's freedom. I'm meeting it. Unless you'd like to explain to the territorial governor why Red Butte is conducting slave auctions in violation of the 13th Amendment. The crowd stirred uneasily. Several men shifted their weight suddenly, finding the ground very interesting. The constitutional reference had landed like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just some cowboy with money to burn. This was someone who knew the law and wasn't afraid to invoke it. Mayor Abernathy's face went from florid to crimson. This is not a slave auction. This is a matter of public decency, then I'm purchasing public decency, Cole said, mounting the platform steps with deliberate calm. He stood eye to eye with the mayor now, and though he didn't raise his voice, everyone could hear him clearly. $200 to restore order and end this spectacle. Unless you're refusing legal tender, the mayor looked trapped. Refusing would mean admitting this whole charade was personal rather than legal. Accepting meant losing face but gaining a sum that could fund town projects for months. Greed won, as it usually did. Sold, Abernathy muttered, snatching the bills from Cole's hand and bringing the gavel down with a sharp crack. To Mr. Cole Rourke of the Triple Bar Ranch. Cole turned to Eliza for the first time, and their eyes met. His expression was unreadable, but there was something there, not pity, not possession, but something else. Recognition, maybe. Respect. He pulled a knife from his belt, and the crowd gasped, but he simply stepped behind her and cut through the ropes binding her wrists. The moment her hands were free, Eliza rubbed her chafed wrists and stepped back, creating distance. She wasn't about to trade one form of bondage for another $200, or not. "Ma'am," Cole said quietly so only she could hear, beneath the crowd's confused murmuring, "I'm not claiming you, I'm buying you free. What you do next is entirely your choice." Eliza stared at him, searching for the lie, the angle, the hidden cost. But his eyes were steady, and in them she saw something that made her breath catch. Genuine anger, not at her, but at what had been done to her, and beneath that, something older, pain that recognized pain. "Why?" she asked, her voice rough from thirst and 3 days of refused tears. "Because no one deserves this." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Because I had a sister once who was taught lessons by men who thought they knew better. Because this is wrong, and I can afford to make it right." The simple honesty of it hit her harder than any pretty speech would have. Before she could respond, Silas Crowell's voice rose from the crowd. "Now hold on, she's a swindler, Rourke, probably wanted in 6 territories. You're taking on a criminal." Cole turned slowly to face Silas, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "If she's a criminal, where are the warrants? Where are the charges? All I see is a woman who wore practical clothing to do practical work, and a town full of men who couldn't handle it." "She was keeping books for the freight company," someone shouted. "Man's work." "She was doing work," Cole corrected, his voice carrying across the square. "And doing it well, I heard. Better than the 3 men they'd had before her. But that's the real problem, isn't it? Not that she wore trousers, but that she was competent in them." The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Several men in the crowd shifted, unwilling to meet his gaze. Mrs. Chen actually smiled quickly, hidden behind her hand. Cole turned back to Eliza, ignoring the muttering crowd. "I'm heading back to my ranch. I can escort you safely out of town, get you wherever you're headed, or I can leave you here with these good people." The irony in good people was subtle but unmistakable. "Your choice." Eliza's mind raced through the options. Stay in Red Butte, impossible, they'd find another excuse to punish her within a week. Head out alone. With $30 and no weapon, she wouldn't make it to the next town before running into trouble. Trust this stranger. She looked at his face again, at the scars on his knuckles that spoke of hard work and harder fights, at the way he stood between her and the crowd without making it obvious, making himself a shield without asking permission. "My rifle," she said finally. "It's in the sheriff's office." Cole nodded once. "Then let's get it back." He gestured for her to precede him down the platform steps. Not pushing, not pulling, just indicating, letting her walk under her own power. It was such a small thing, but after 3 days of being manhandled and ordered about, it felt like a radical act of respect. They walked through the crowd together, Cole slightly behind, and to her right, a position that protected her back without hovering. People fell silent as they passed, uncertain how to react. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. The unruly woman was supposed to be broken, not bought free. The system was supposed to reinforce itself, not crack open in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. Sheriff Abel Turner was sitting on the porch of his office, whittling a piece of wood and pretending he hadn't heard the commotion in the square. He was a pragmatic man, weathered by years of frontier justice, and he'd learned when to look the other way. But he stood when he saw them approaching, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun belt before he recognized Cole. "Rourke," he acknowledged with a nod. "Sheriff," Cole returned evenly. "We're here for Miss Hart's property, her Winchester, her saddlebags, whatever you confiscated." Turner's eyes flicked to Eliza, then back to Cole. "That rifle was held as evidence." "Evidence of what?" "There were no charges filed, just a town auction that you conveniently didn't stop." Cole's tone remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "The mayor has his money, the spectacle's over, now we're collecting her property." The sheriff chewed his lip, calculating. Cole Rourke owned one of the most successful ranches in the territory, employed 30 men, and had friends in Prescott who knew the territorial governor personally. More importantly, he was right. There had been no formal charges, no trial, just mob justice dressed up in municipal clothing. "You taking responsibility for her?" Turner asked. "I'm taking responsibility for ensuring she gets her property back and safe passage out of town," Cole clarified. "What she does after that is her business." Eliza spoke up for the first time since leaving the platform. "I can speak for myself, Sheriff. I've committed no crime and you know it. The only law broken here was when you let that mob throw me in a cell for 3 days without charges." Turner's jaw tightened, but he couldn't argue the point. He disappeared into his office and emerged a moment later with Eliza's Winchester, her worn saddlebags, and a small bundle of personal effects. He handed them over reluctantly. Eliza checked the rifle immediately, still loaded, mechanism clean. "Good." She slung it over her shoulder with practiced ease, and the sheriff's eyes narrowed at the familiar gesture. Women weren't supposed to be comfortable with weapons, weren't supposed to check the action and load with that kind of automatic competence. "You're making a mistake, Rourke," Turner said quietly. "She's trouble, always has been." "Trouble," Cole repeated, and something cold flickered in his eyes. "Yes, I imagine she is troubling to men who can't stand the idea of a woman being their equal. Fortunately, that's not a problem I have." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that was more dismissive than polite, then turned to Eliza. "My horse is at the livery. You have a mount?" "Had one. They sold it to cover the fine for my trousers." Cole's expression darkened further, but he just nodded. "We'll sort that out." They walked toward the livery stable, and Eliza could feel eyes on them from every window, every doorway. The whole town was watching, trying to understand what had just happened. In a way, she was trying to understand it herself. This man had spent a small fortune to free her and so far hadn't asked for anything in return. It defied everything she'd learned about human nature, about men in particular. At the livery, Cole's horse was a magnificent sorrel gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm temperament. The stable hand, a nervous young man named Billy, brought out the horse without meeting Eliza's eyes. "We'll need to purchase a second horse," Cole told him. "Something reliable, and a decent saddle." "That'll be expensive, Mr. Rourke," Billy ventured. "Maybe the lady could ride double with you." "The lady," Eliza interrupted coldly, "will have her own horse, thank you." Cole's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "You heard the woman. Best mare you've got, and a proper saddle. Not some side saddle nonsense either." Billy scurried off, and Cole checked his horse's tack with methodical care. Eliza watched his hands, efficient, gentle with the animal, no wasted movement. Working hands, honest hands. Maybe. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again. "And don't say it's just because it's right. Nobody spends $200 on principle alone." Cole was quiet for a moment, adjusting a stirrup that didn't need adjusting. When he spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. "I had a sister, Sarah, younger than me by 3 years. Smart as a whip, could outshoot most of the boys in our county back in Missouri. She wanted to wear split skirts for riding, wanted to learn the ranch books, wanted to have a say in how things were run." He paused, his hands stilling on the leather. "My father thought he was teaching her proper ways. His methods got rougher when she wouldn't break. One day she took a horse and ran. I found her 3 days later. She'd gotten thrown, broken her neck. But it wasn't the fall that killed her. It was the running, being so desperate to escape that she rode a green horse through rough country in the dark." Eliza's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. I made a promise over her grave." Cole continued, finally looking at her, "that I'd never stand by and watch someone be punished for being who they are, that I'd never let teaching lessons go unchallenged. So when I heard about a woman being auctioned off for wearing trousers..." He shook his head. "I couldn't, I won't." The raw honesty in his words made Eliza reassess everything. This wasn't charity or a power play. This was atonement. This was a man trying to prevent another Sarah from running into the dark. Billy returned with a sturdy bay mare that looked sound and calm. The saddle was well worn but good quality, and as requested, not a side saddle. Cole paid without haggling, and Eliza felt another pang of complicated emotion. She hated being in anyone's debt, but she also couldn't deny that without his intervention, she'd still be on that platform, or worse, in Silas Crowell's possession. "Mount up," Cole said, swinging onto his sorrel. "We should be gone before the town decides to have second thoughts." Eliza settled into the saddle with relief, her first moment of real comfort in days. The mare responded well to her touch, and she felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. A horse beneath her, a rifle across her back, and open country ahead. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was close. They rode out of Red Butte at a steady pace, neither hurrying nor dawdling. As the town fell away behind them, Eliza allowed herself one glance back. The buildings shimmered in the heat, and she could still see figures in the square watching them go. She turned forward and didn't look back again. They rode in silence for the first hour, the only sounds, the creak of saddle leather, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats, and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. The land spread out around them in shades of ochre and sage, beautiful in its harsh way. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in golds and reds. Finally, Cole spoke. "There's a creek about 2 miles ahead. Good place to water the horses and rest a bit. We can make camp there for the night if you're amenable, or push on another few miles to the line shack on my property. Your choice." Always her choice. He kept saying that, and each time it chipped away at her defensive walls a little more. "The creek is fine," she said, "but separate bedrolls, and I keep my rifle." "Wouldn't have it any other way, ma'am." "Eliza, if we're traveling together, you might as well use my name." "Eliza," he acknowledged. "Cole." The creek, when they reached it, was a ribbon of cool water cutting through the red earth lined with cottonwoods that provided blessed shade. They dismounted and let the horses drink while they refilled canteens. Cole pulled jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags, offering half to Eliza without ceremony. As the sun set, Cole built a small fire, just enough for comfort, and coffee, not enough to be seen from a distance. Eliza noticed the tactical choice and filed it away. He was thinking about pursuit, about danger. He knew this wasn't over. They sat on opposite sides of the fire, and Cole poured coffee into 2 battered tin cups. The bitter liquid was heaven after days of nothing but water, and Eliza savored it despite the heat. "So what now?" she asked. "You've bought my freedom, given me a horse, and fed me. This debt's getting substantial, Cole Rourke." "There's no debt," he said firmly, "but I do have a proposition if you're interested in hearing it." Eliza's guard went up immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "The working kind. The triple bar needs a bookkeeper. My last one quit 3 months ago, couldn't handle ranch life, went back east. I've been managing the accounts myself, and I'm a rancher, not an accountant. The books are a mess. Pay is $40 a month plus room and board in your own cabin. You'd be expected to keep the ranch accounts, manage payroll, handle correspondence with buyers. Standard work hours, Sundays off, no dress code." He said the last part with deliberate emphasis, and despite everything, Eliza almost smiled. "And the catch?" she asked. "No catch. You do good work, you get paid. You want to leave, you leave. No obligations beyond a month's notice so I can find a replacement." He paused. "I won't lie, some of the hands might have opinions about a woman keeping books, but they'll keep those opinions to themselves or find work elsewhere. I run a respectful outfit." Eliza studied him across the flames. It was a good offer, better than good. Honest work, fair pay, her own space, and a boss who'd just proven he'd stand against a whole town for a stranger's dignity. But it also meant staying in one place, being dependent on employment she could lose, being under any man's authority again. "1 month," she said finally. "Trial period. You decide if my work's satisfactory, I decide if the arrangement suits me. After that, we renegotiate or part ways clean." Cole extended his hand across the fire. "Deal." Eliza shook it, and his grip was firm but not crushing, a working handshake between equals. When they released, she felt the strangest sensation, not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. Possibility, maybe. They finished their coffee in companionable silence, and then Cole stood to check the horses one more time, while Eliza spread her bedroll on the opposite side of the fire from his. She kept the Winchester within arm's reach and noticed he didn't comment on it, didn't expect her to relax her guard just because he'd been decent so far. As the fire burned down to embers and the stars emerged in force above them, Eliza stared up at the vast Arizona sky and thought about the strange turns life could take. Yesterday, she'd been in a jail cell facing humiliation and worse. Today, she was free, employed, and camped under the stars, with a man who seemed to respect her autonomy as much as he respected his own. She didn't trust it yet, couldn't afford to, but maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to hope. Across the dying fire, Cole's voice came quiet in the darkness. "Eliza, yeah, welcome to the Triple Bar." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Tomorrow would bring the ranch the work, the reality of whether this fragile new arrangement could hold. Tonight, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Eliza Hart slept without fear, her hand resting on her rifle and the stars standing guard overhead. The morning sun broke over the eastern ridge like a promise, painting the Triple Bar Ranch in shades of gold and amber. Eliza reined in her mare beside Cole at the crest of the final hill, and for the first time in 3 days, something in her chest loosened. The ranch spread out below them, a collection of sturdy buildings, arranged around a central yard, corrals holding perhaps 50 horses, and beyond that, cattle dotting the rangeland like dark stones scattered across red earth. "Home," Cole said simply, and there was pride in his voice, earned pride. As they descended toward the ranch house, Eliza noticed details that spoke to the operation's character. Fences were well-maintained buildings, freshly painted, and the bunkhouse had actual glass windows instead of shutters. This wasn't some hard-scrabble outfit barely hanging on. This was a successful enterprise run by someone who cared about more than just profit. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, tall and lean, with silver threading through his dark hair. He had the bow-legged walk of someone who'd spent more time in a saddle than out of it, and his weathered face creased into a smile when he saw Cole. "Boss didn't expect you back until tomorrow." His eyes shifted to Eliza, taking in her trousers and the Winchester across her back with raised eyebrows, but no judgment. "Got company, I see." Cole dismounted and Eliza followed suit. "Hank, this is Eliza Hart. She's our new bookkeeper. Eliza Hank Morrison, my foreman, and the man who actually keeps this place running." Hank extended a calloused hand, and Eliza shook it. His grip was firm, assessing, but his eyes were kind. "Bookkeeper, huh? Lord knows we need one. The ledgers are in worse shape than a 3-legged calf in a wolf den." "That bad?" Eliza asked. "Worse. Cole's been doing his best, but ranching and accounting are 2 different skills. No offense, boss." "None taken," Cole said with a slight smile. "It's why I hired someone who knows what they're doing. Can you show Eliza to the old foreman's cabin? It needs cleaning out, but it's sound." "Will do, but fair warning, miss. It's been storing tack and old equipment for the last 3 months. Might take some elbow grease to make it livable." Eliza straightened. "I'm not afraid of work, Mr. Morrison. Just Hank, ma'am, and I can see that." He gestured toward a small cabin set apart from the bunkhouse near a cluster of cottonwoods. "Let's get you settled." As they walked, Eliza was aware of eyes on her. Ranch hands had emerged from various buildings, and while they tried not to stare, their curiosity was palpable. A Chinese man stood in the cookhouse doorway, wiping his hands on his apron. A young hand barely out of his teens had stopped mid-task to gape until an older cowboy cuffed him gently and redirected his attention. The cabin was small but solid, one room with a pot-bellied stove, a narrow bed frame, a table, and 2 chairs. As Hank had warned, it was crowded with saddles, bridles, and various ranch equipment, all covered in dust. "We'll get this cleared out today," Hank said. Get you some proper furnishings. There's linens in the main house, and Wong, that's our cook. He'll make sure you're fed proper. I can clear it myself, Eliza said. Just point me to where this equipment belongs. Hank studied her for a moment, then nodded with what looked like approval. Joey, he called out the door. The young hand who'd been staring earlier came running. Help Miss Hart move this tack to the barn. Mind your manners. Joey was perhaps 19 with a shock of red hair and freckles splattered across his sunburned face. He ducked his head shyly. Yes, sir, ma'am. They worked in awkward silence, at first carrying saddles and bridles across the yard. On the third trip, Joey finally worked up the courage to speak. Miss Hart, is it true you can shoot better than most men? Eliza raised an eyebrow. Where'd you hear that? Cole mentioned it to Hank. Said you handled your Winchester like you were born with it. I can shoot, she said carefully. My uncle taught me. Said a woman alone needed to be able to protect herself. Smart uncle, Joey said, then hesitated. Some of the boys are saying, well, they're saying things about why you're here, about Red Butte and the auction and such. Eliza stopped walking and turned to face him directly. What exactly are they saying, Joey? The young man flushed crimson. I don't believe it, ma'am. I'm just saying that's the talk. That you were arrested for indecency, that you're some kind of criminal, that Cole's making a mistake bringing you here. And what do you think? Joey met her eyes with surprising steadiness. I think you're wearing the same kind of trousers I am, and nobody's auctioning me off for it. I think that's a load of horse shit, pardon my language. Despite herself, Eliza smiled. Your language is pardoned, and your thinking is sound. They finished clearing the cabin, and Joey brought her a broom, a bucket, and cleaning rags without being asked. As she scrubbed years of dust from the plank floors, Eliza heard voices outside Cole talking to someone, his tone firm but not harsh. She works here now, same as anyone else. Anyone got a problem with that can collect their pay and ride out. No hard feelings, but no tolerance for disrespect either. A rumble of male voices responded, words unclear, but tone accepting. Eliza realized she was holding her breath and forced herself to exhale. This was the test, whether Cole's authority would hold, whether the hands would accept her or make her life hell. A shadow fell across the doorway, and the Chinese cook entered carrying a tray. He was perhaps 50, with graying hair in a neat queue and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I am Wong, he said, his English precise despite a heavy accent. Mr. Cole says you need food and tea. I bring both. The tray held sandwiches, fresh bread, cold chicken, and a pot of tea that smelled like heaven. Eliza's stomach growled audibly. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Just Wong. He set the tray on the freshly cleaned table. You are the bookkeeper, yes. The one who was in Red Butte trouble. Eliza tensed. Yes. Wong nodded slowly. I too know about trouble for being different. I come here from San Francisco, from the railroad camps. Many places Chinese not welcome. Mr. Cole, he not care about that. He care only can you do the work. Are you honest? Are you respectful? He met her eyes. You pass those tests, you belong here. Simple. There was a weight of experience behind his words, and Eliza felt an unexpected kinship. Thank you, Wong. That means more than you know. He smiled just slightly. You eat. Get strong. Tomorrow, the ledgers. Today, you rest. But Eliza wasn't built for resting. By late afternoon, she'd scrubbed the cabin until it shone, arranged the simple furniture, and made up the bed with the linens Hank had provided. She stood in the doorway as the sun began its descent, surveying her new domain. Small, yes. Humble, certainly. But hers. For the first time since leaving Boston, she had a space that belonged to her, where no one could tell her what to wear or how to be. Cole found her there, leaning against the doorframe. Settling in, it's perfect, she said, and meant it. Good. Dinner's in an hour. We all eat together in the cookhouse. No requirements, but Wong gets his feelings hurt if people skip meals without cause. Eliza hesitated. The men, are they going to be a problem? I've made it clear they won't be. Whether they like it or not is their business, as long as they're respectful. But Eliza, he paused, choosing words carefully. You're going to have to find your own way here. I can enforce respect, but I can't make them accept you. That part's on you. It was fair, and she appreciated the honesty. Understood. Dinner in the cookhouse was an education in ranch hierarchy and human nature. The long table could seat 20, and about 15 men were present. They fell silent when Eliza entered, and she felt the weight of their assessment like a physical thing. Cole was already seated at the head of the table and gestured to an empty chair near Hank. Eliza sat, keeping her spine straight and her expression neutral. Wong brought out platters of beef potatoes, greens, and fresh bread, and the men fell to eating with the single-minded focus of people who'd worked hard all day. Conversation started slowly, carefully, avoiding the elephant in the room. Talk of cattle of a fence that needed mending, of tomorrow's plans. Eliza ate quietly, listening, learning the dynamics. Joey sat across from her, sneaking glances, but saying nothing. An older hand named Pete studied her with open skepticism. Others seemed indifferent, more interested in their food than in politics. Then a man at the far end spoke up, his tone just shy of challenging. So Miss Hart, Cole says you're keeping our books now. You know anything about ranching? The table quieted. Cole's fork paused halfway to his mouth, but he didn't intervene. This was her test. Eliza met the man's eyes steadily. I know about numbers, Mr. Jenks. Tom Jenks. Mr. Jenks. I know about profit and loss, about tracking expenses and revenues, about ensuring that when you sell 100 head of cattle, you're paid for 100 head and not 90. I know about contracts and correspondence, about managing payroll, so hard-working men get their wages on time and in full. She paused. I don't know much about ranching itself yet, but I'm a fast learner and I'm honest. If you want your books kept proper, I can do that. If you want someone who can rope a steer while calculating depreciation, you'll be disappointed. A few men chuckled at that, and Tom Jenks actually smiled slightly. Fair enough, miss. Long as the numbers are right and the pay don't go missing. The numbers will be right, Eliza promised, and the only thing going missing will be the chaos in your ledgers. That earned more chuckles, and the tension eased noticeably. Conversation resumed, and this time Eliza was included in it more naturally. Joey asked her about Boston, and she told sanitized stories about city life that made the cowboys shake their heads in wonder. Hank shared tales of trail drives that had her laughing despite herself. Even Pete warmed up enough to pass her the bread without scowling. After dinner, Cole walked her back to her cabin. The desert night was cool, the sky ablaze with stars. You handled that well, he observed. They're testing me. It's natural. Still, you didn't back down, didn't get defensive. That was smart. They reached her door, and Eliza turned to face him. Cole, about what happened in Red Butte. I need to know. Are there going to be consequences for you? For the ranch, $200 is a lot of money, and you made enemies of the mayor and half the town. Cole's expression was thoughtful in the moonlight. Let them come. I've dealt with worse than petty bureaucrats and small-town tyrants. Besides, I didn't do anything illegal. Controversial, maybe, but not illegal. Silas Crowell, he's not the type to let things go. No, he's not. Cole's jaw tightened, which is why you don't go anywhere alone for a while, not until we know how this is going to play out. Someone's always in the yard, and if you need to go to town, you take an escort. Eliza bristled instinctively at the restriction, but she forced herself to think practically. He wasn't trying to control her, he was trying to keep her safe from real threats. How long? Few weeks, maybe a month, until the gossip dies down and Silas finds some other grievance to nurse. She nodded reluctantly. All right. But Cole, I won't be a prisoner here, even a comfortable one. Wouldn't ask you to be, just asking you to be smart. After he left, Eliza lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. Horses in the corral, the distant call of a coyote, the creak of wood settling in the cooling air. It was so different from Boston's constant noise, from Santa Fe's mission bells, from Red Butte's judgment. Tomorrow she'd start on the ledgers. Tomorrow she'd prove her worth. But tonight, in this quiet moment, she allowed herself to feel something dangerous: hope. The next morning arrived with Wong's breakfast bell at dawn. Eliza dressed quickly in her practical clothes, trousers, work shirt, boots, and braided her hair back. When she emerged, the ranch was already bustling with activity. Men headed out to various tasks, calling to each other in the easy shorthand of people who'd worked together for years. Cole met her outside the main house, ready to see the disaster lead the way. The office was a small room off the main house's parlor, and when Cole opened the door, Eliza understood why he'd been so desperate for help. Papers were stacked haphazardly on every surface. Ledgers lay open at random pages, some with coffee stains, others with what looked like mud. A filing system seemed to have been attempted at some point, then abandoned in favor of chaos. "Sweet mercy," Eliza breathed. "I know it got away from me." Between managing the herd, the hands, the buyers, the breeding program, Cole ran a hand through his hair. "The numbers are there somewhere, they're just not organized." Eliza rolled up her sleeves. "All right, I'll need supplies. Proper ledgers, ink blotting, paper filing boxes. And I'll need to talk to you about the ranch's operations, income sources, regular expenses, seasonal variations. Whatever you need." He looked relieved just to have someone taking charge of the mess. "I'll be out on the range most of today, but Hank can answer questions. And Eliza, don't let anyone bully you out of information you need to do your job. You have full authority to access any records question, any expenditure, talk to any hand about their work." "Even yours?" she asked with a slight smile. "Especially mine. I hired you to keep me honest as much as anyone else." Over the next week, Eliza threw herself into the work with fierce concentration. She started by sorting papers by date, then by category: purchases, sales, payroll, maintenance, breeding records. Patterns emerged from the chaos. She discovered duplicate payments to suppliers, a fence contractor who'd been paid twice for the same job, seasonal expenses that hadn't been properly tracked. But she also found evidence of Cole's integrity. He paid his men well, invested in quality equipment, and maintained reserves for hard times. The ranch was profitable more than she'd expected, but the lack of organization meant opportunities were being missed. On the third day, she was deep in ledger reconciliation when Joey knocked on the office door. "Miss Hart, Hank says there's a problem with last month's payroll records. Says 3 men are short, and he can't figure out why." Eliza looked up, her eyes tired from hours of small print. "Send him in." Hank entered, his expression troubled. "I've got Pete, Sam, and Rodriguez all saying they're owed another week's wages. But the ledger shows they were paid in full. Let me see the timesheet." Eliza compared it to the ledger entries, then to the cash disbursement records. After 10 minutes of cross-referencing, she found it. "Here, the timesheet shows them working an extra week during the roundup, but it was entered into the ledger as regular month, not overtime. They're owed all right, $4 each." Hank let out a low whistle. "I'll let them know, but that's $12 we'll have to already accounted for," Eliza said, making a note. "I'm creating a correction column. All errors get fixed going forward, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." Word spread through the ranch like wildfire. The new bookkeeper had found money owed to the hands, and she'd made sure they got it. By dinner that night, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. Men who'd been standoffish now nodded greeting. Pete actually thanked her. But it was Joey who brought trouble to her door on the 8th day. He burst into the office without knocking, his face pale. "Miss Hart, there's riders coming. 4 of them from Red Butte." Eliza's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She moved to the window and saw them, 4 men on horseback, riding up the main approach to the ranch. She recognized one immediately, Silas Crowell, his thin face set in false pleasantness. The others looked like muscle-hired guns, perhaps. She found Cole in the barn, and his expression turned grim when she told him. "Get inside the house," he ordered. "No, this is about me. I'm not hiding." "Eliza." "No." Her voice was steel. "I'm done running, done being someone's problem to solve. If Silas has something to say, he can say it to my face." Cole studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but you stay behind me, and if shooting starts, you hit the ground." They walked out to meet the riders together, Hank falling in on Cole's other side. Ranch hands emerged from various buildings, forming a loose semicircle of support. Joey positioned himself near the barn with a rifle, trying to look casual and failing. Silas reined in his horse, that thin smile never reaching his eyes. "Cole Rourke, heard you were harboring a fugitive." "Heard wrong, Silas. I'm employing a bookkeeper. Last I checked, that's not illegal." "Is that what she told you?" Silas's eyes slid to Eliza. "Did she mention the warrant out of Boston? The charges of theft and fraud?" Eliza's blood ran cold, but she kept her face impassive. "There is no warrant, Silas. There are no charges. Just lies from a cousin who couldn't control me." "That's not what the telegram from Boston says." Silas pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Seems one Gerald Pemberton is very interested in your whereabouts, Miss Hart. Seems he's claiming you embezzled from the family business before you ran." Cole's hand moved to his gun belt, not drawing, but making his capability clear. "If there's a warrant, produce it through official channels. Until then, get off my land." "Now, Cole, I'm just trying to help. As a concerned citizen." Silas's smile widened. "Of course, if Miss Hart wanted to come back to Red Butte and clear this up peaceful-like, I'm sure arrangements could be made." "What kind of arrangements?" Eliza asked, her voice cold. "The kind where you drop these uppity notions about trousers and independence. The kind where you remember a woman's place. The kind where maybe you show some gratitude to folks who could make your problems disappear." The implications were clear, and rage flooded through Eliza like wildfire. But before she could speak, Cole stepped forward. "You've got 10 seconds to get off my property, Silas. Then I stop being polite." One of Silas's men reached for his gun, and suddenly the yard was full of the sound of rifles being cocked. Every ranch hand had appeared armed, forming a wall of steel and determination. The hired guns froze, realizing they were catastrophically outnumbered. Silas's smile finally faltered. "This isn't over, Rourke. That woman's a criminal, and the law will handle it proper." Cole interrupted. "Through Sheriff Turner, through the territorial courts, through due process. Not through your threats and extortion. Now ride out, or I'll have you carried out." For a long moment, the tableau held two forces balanced on the edge of violence. Then Silas yanked his horse's head around. "You're making a mistake, Rourke. When the truth comes out, this ranch's reputation will be mud." "My ranch's reputation is built on hard work and honest dealing," Cole replied. "Not on bullying women and spreading lies. Now get." They rode out, but Silas's parting look promised this was far from over. When the dust settled, Eliza realized she was shaking. Cole turned to her, his expression serious. "Is there any truth to what he said about Boston?" Eliza met his eyes directly. "My cousin Gerald wanted control of the family trust. When our grandfather died, I was named executor because grandfather knew Gerald would waste it. Gerald tried to have me declared incompetent, said a woman couldn't handle such responsibility. When that failed, he tried to force me into marrying his business partner. I refused and left Boston with my share of the inheritance. Everything else is lies." "Can you prove it?" "I have papers, documentation, my grandfather's will, all locked in a safe deposit box in San Francisco. I can wire my uncle, he's a lawyer. He helped me escape Gerald's schemes." Cole nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do. First thing tomorrow, we ride to the telegraph office in Prescott. We get ahead of this before Silas can poison more minds." That evening, Eliza sat in her cabin composing the telegram to her Uncle James in her mind. Outside, she could hear the ranch settling into night rhythms, but there was an alertness now, a watchfulness. Cole had posted guards, not obviously, but she'd seen Joey making rounds, seen Hank checking the perimeter. A knock at her door made her jump. She grabbed her Winchester before calling, "Who is it?" "It's me." She opened the door to find Cole standing there with something wrapped in brown paper. "Thought you might want this," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a dress, simple but well made, in a deep blue that reminded her of twilight. Eliza stared at it, confused. "It was my sister's," Cole said quietly. "Sarah's. I kept a few of her things, thought maybe one day I'd have a daughter to give them to, but I want you to have it for the social next week if you want to go." Social, town gathering in Prescott, dancing, food, socializing. "I usually attend, it's good for business, keeps connections. But Eliza, you don't have to go, and you don't have to wear the dress. You can wear your trousers if that's more comfortable. I wanted you to have the choice." Eliza ran her fingers over the fabric, feeling the weight of the gesture. "Why does this feel like more than just a dress?" "Because it is. It's me saying you belong here. It's me saying I trust you, whatever Silas claims. It's me saying—" He hesitated, then continued, "It's me saying I'm glad you're here, and I hope you stay." The honesty in his voice made her throat tight. She looked up at him, this man who'd bought her freedom, given her work, protected her, and asked nothing in return but honest labor. "I don't know if I can go to a social, Cole. After Red Butte, after the auction, the thought of people staring again, judging, then we won't go, simple as that." But even as he said it, Eliza felt something stubborn kindle inside her. Why should Silas's threats and small-minded gossip keep her from living? Why should she hide away like she'd done something wrong? "No," she said slowly. "No, we'll go. And I'll wear the dress. And I'll show them that I'm not ashamed, not afraid, and not going anywhere." Cole's smile was slow but genuine. "That's the spirit. But Eliza, we'll leave the second you're uncomfortable. No questions, no judgment. Deal." The week passed in a blur of work and preparation. Eliza continued organizing the ledgers, finding more inefficiencies and fixing them. She drafted letters to buyers, renegotiated a feed contract that saved the ranch $50, and implemented a new filing system that made Hank actually sigh with relief. The telegram to Uncle James went out along with one to the bank in San Francisco requesting confirmation of her accounts and her grandfather's will. Now it was a waiting game. But Cole wasn't idle. He made his own inquiries, sending wires to contacts in Boston and to the territorial capital. If Silas was going to wage war with paperwork and rumors, Cole would fight back with facts and connections. The night before the social, Eliza tried on Sarah's dress. It fit reasonably well. Sarah had been slightly taller, but the hem was manageable. The blue brought out the color in Eliza's eyes, and for the first time in months, she looked at herself in the small mirror and saw not just a survivor, but a woman with dignity, with purpose, with a future that didn't involve running. Wong knocked on her door with alterations he'd taken in the waist, slightly hemmed. The skirt added small touches that made the dress truly fit. "You look good," he said simply. "You look strong." The social was held in Prescott's Community Hall, a large wooden building that had been decorated with bunting and lanterns. Music spilled out into the street, fiddle, guitar, and someone's enthusiastic but slightly off-key singing. Cole helped Eliza down from the wagon, and she took a deep breath before entering. The reaction was immediate. Conversations stuttered and stopped. Eyes found her, assessed her past judgment. Eliza felt Cole's hand light on her back. Not possessive, just supportive, and she raised her chin and walked into that sea of stares with her head high. The minister's wife, a formidable woman named Mrs. Hollister, approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Rourke, how lovely to see you. and this must be your new employee. This is Miss Eliza Hart, my bookkeeper, Cole said evenly. Eliza, Mrs. Hollister, leads the ladies' auxiliary. How interesting. Mrs. Hollister said the word dripping with implications. I heard about the unfortunate incident in Red Butte. Such a scandal. The only scandal, Cole replied before Eliza could speak, was a town auctioning off a woman for her choice of clothing. Miss Hart's competence as a bookkeeper has nothing to do with her wardrobe, and frankly I consider myself lucky to have found someone of her caliber. The public endorsement silenced Mrs. Hollister, though her expression remained pinched. Other townsfolk drifted closer, curiosity winning over propriety. Some faces were friendly, the general store owner, a rancher. Cole did business with a few younger women who looked intrigued rather than scandalized, but others were cold. Eliza saw the whispers, the pointing, the judgment that said she'd somehow brought this on herself. She felt the old familiar anger rising, but she tamped it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. Proving them wrong would. Cole introduced her to business associates, treating her as a colleague rather than a curiosity. Eliza's reorganized our entire accounting system, he told a cattle buyer. Found inefficiencies I didn't even know existed. Already saved the triple bar significant money. The buyer, a pragmatic man named Henderson, looked impressed. That's so. Maybe I should hire you away, Miss Hart. Not a chance, Cole said with a smile. She's triple bar through and through. The word sent an unexpected warmth through Eliza. Triple bar through and through. As if she belonged. As if this was home. The dancing started and Cole turned to her. May I have this dance, Miss Hart? Eliza hesitated. She could dance. Her mother had insisted on lessons back in Boston, but doing so here in front of all these judging eyes felt exposed, vulnerable. But then she saw Silas Crowell enter the hall, his thin smile in place, and something defiant surged through her. She took Cole's offered hand. You may. They moved onto the floor, and Cole proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, confident without being showy, leading without controlling. As they turned through the steps, Eliza became aware of the scrutiny from every corner of the hall. They're all watching, she murmured. Let them watch, Cole replied. Let them see a competent woman being treated with respect. Let them see that the sky doesn't fall when a lady wears trousers or keeps books or does anything else she's capable of. You're trying to make a point. We both are. The question is, are we making it together? Eliza met his eyes and found something there she hadn't expected. Partnership. Not romance, not obligation, but genuine partnership. Two people standing against ignorance and prejudice together. Together, she agreed. As the song ended, Silas Crowell stepped into their path. Might I have the next dance, Miss Hart? I feel we got off on the wrong foot. No, Eliza said flatly. Now that's hardly neighborly. The lady said no. Cole interrupted, his voice carrying steel beneath the courtesy. Silas's smile turned ugly. Protective, aren't we? Makes a man wonder what exactly your arrangement is with Miss Hart. Or should I say what Gerald Pemberton's wanted criminal is offering in exchange for protection? The nearby couples stopped dancing. The music faltered. Into the sudden silence, Eliza spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the hall. Gerald Pemberton is my cousin, a man who tried to steal my inheritance and force me into marriage when legal manipulation failed. I left Boston with what was rightfully mine, and every document proves it. If Mr. Crowell has evidence otherwise, he should present it to proper authorities. If not, he should stop spreading slander before I pursue legal action for defamation. The crowd murmured. Sheriff Turner, who'd been standing near the refreshment table, moved closer. That's a serious accusation, Silas. You got proof of criminal activity, or are you just stirring trouble? Silas's face flushed. I've got telegrams, I've got my hearsay. The sheriff cut him off. Bring me a warrant, bring me official charges, or stop wasting my time and Miss Hart's. It wasn't quite vindication, but it was something. Silas backed off, but his expression promised this wasn't over. He left the hall and gradually normalcy returned. The music resumed. People went back to their conversations, though now many of those conversations included Eliza's name. A young woman approached, perhaps 25, with kind eyes and a forthright manner. "Miss Hart, I'm Catherine Monroe. I run the schoolhouse here in Prescott. I just wanted to say, well, what you said took courage, and I think it's about time someone challenged the way things are done around here." "Thank you, Miss Monroe." "Please, Catherine, and if you ever need anything, a friend, a refuge, whatever, you know where to find me." It was a small thing, one woman's support, but it meant more than Eliza could express. Other women approached throughout the evening, some curious, some supportive, some clearly struggling with their own thoughts about propriety and freedom. Eliza spoke with them honestly, neither apologizing for who she was nor condemning them for their uncertainty. By the time they left near midnight, Eliza was exhausted but oddly exhilarated. On the ride back to the ranch, she and Cole sat in comfortable silence, the wagon creaking beneath them and stars wheeling overhead. "You did good tonight," Cole said finally. "We did good," Eliza corrected. "I couldn't have done it without you standing beside me. That's what partners do. Partners." The words settled between them, comfortable and right. Not romantic partners, that wasn't what either of them needed or wanted. But partners in building something better, in challenging old assumptions, in creating a space where competence mattered more than convention. When they reached the ranch, Cole helped her down from the wagon, and Eliza noticed his hand lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met in the moonlight, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement maybe, or possibility. "Good night, Eliza." "Good night, Cole." She went to her cabin, hung Sarah's dress carefully, and changed into her nightclothes. Through the window she could see the ranch building, silvered by moonlight, solid and real. Tomorrow would bring more challenges Silas wouldn't give up, and Gerald's threats still loomed. But tonight, for the first time since leaving Boston, Eliza felt like she had allies, like she had a place to stand and fight from, like she had perhaps found home. The telegram arrived 3 days later, delivered by a nervous rider from Prescott who kept glancing at Eliza like she might explode. She signed for it with steady hands, though her heart was hammering, and waited until she was alone in the office before opening it. The words swam before her eyes at first, then sharpened into focus. It was from Uncle James, and relief flooded through her so powerfully she had to sit down. "Eliza, stop! Gerald filed false warrant rescinded by Judge Morrison. Stop! Your inheritance secure. Stop sending affidavit and documentation by express mail. Stop! You are clear. Stop! Come home if you wish, or stay where you are safe. Stop! Your loving Uncle James." She read it 3 times, each word sinking in like a benediction. Clear. She was clear. No warrant, no charges, just Gerald's desperate lies crumbling under the weight of truth and proper legal scrutiny. Her hands trembled as she set the telegram down, and she realized tears were streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of pure, overwhelming relief. A knock at the door made her swipe quickly at her eyes. "Come in." Cole entered, took one look at her face, and his expression shifted from concern to hope. "Good news." She handed him the telegram wordlessly. He read it, and a slow smile spread across his face, genuine, unguarded, transforming his usually serious features. "Clear," he said softly. "You're clear." "I'm clear," she repeated. And suddenly she was laughing, the sound bright and disbelieving, in the small office. Uncle James came through. Gerald's lies didn't stand up to actual legal examination. Cole moved around the desk and did something unexpected. He pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. It lasted only a moment, appropriate and respectful, but it conveyed everything words couldn't. Relief, joy, solidarity. When he stepped back, his eyes were bright. "We need to tell the sheriff. Get this on official record before Silas tries another angle." They rode to Prescott together that afternoon, Hank accompanying them as both witness and protection. Sheriff Turner read the telegram with a carefully neutral expression, then nodded slowly. "I'll make note of this in my records," he said. and I'll wire the territorial marshal's office to confirm. If anyone comes around with claims about warrants or criminal charges, I'll know to dismiss them." "And Silas Crowell?" Eliza asked. "He's been spreading lies, damaging my reputation based on false information." Turner's jaw worked. "That's a civil matter, Miss Hart. Defamation, slander, that's for courts and lawyers. I can't arrest a man for running his mouth, much as I might want to sometimes." "But you can investigate where he got his information," Cole interjected. "Someone sent him that fake warrant, or he fabricated it himself. Either way, that's fraud." The sheriff's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That's a valid point. I'll look into it. But Rourke, Miss Hart, be careful. Silas doesn't take well to being cornered. Man like that backed into a corner, he's liable to do something stupid." They left the sheriff's office and were walking toward their horses when a voice called out from across the street, "Well, well, the criminal and her protector." Silas stood in front of his saloon, flanked by two rough-looking men Eliza didn't recognize. His thin smile was in place, but his eyes were cold with fury. Cole's hand moved instinctively toward his gun. "You've got something to say, Silas, say it plain. Just wondering how long you'll keep defending her once the real truth comes out, once people know what she really is." Eliza stepped forward before Cole could respond, her anger finally finding its voice. "What I really am is a woman who refused to be controlled by men like you and my cousin. What I really am is someone who walked away from wealth and comfort rather than submit to coercion. What I really am is honest, hard-working, and innocent of every charge you've tried to fabricate." "Innocent?" Silas laughed, the sound ugly. "You're a lot of things, Miss Hart, but innocent ain't one of them. You think that telegram clears you. It just means your uncle's got better lawyers than your cousin. Doesn't mean you're not a thief and a liar." Cole moved between them, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're done, Silas. The warrant was fake, the charges were false, and now you're going to back off before you find yourself on the wrong side of a slander lawsuit. Or worse. Threatening me, Rourke. Warning you, there's a difference." For a moment, the street was silent except for the wind rustling dust devils between the buildings. Then Silas smiled again, and it was the smile of a man who had another card to play. "You know what I think? I think Miss Hart's got secrets. I think there's more to her story than she's letting on, and I think I'm going to find out what those secrets are." He turned his gaze to Eliza. "Every woman's got something she's ashamed of. Question is, what's yours?" The words hit deeper than Eliza wanted to admit, because he was right about one thing: everyone had secrets. Hers wasn't criminal, wasn't shameful by her own measure, but in the eyes of people like Silas, like the Red Butte mob, simply being a woman who chose her own path was enough. "My secret," she said clearly, "is that I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not leaving." They rode back to the ranch in tense silence. Hank kept scanning the horizon, hand near his rifle, and Eliza realized they were all expecting trouble. Silas's threats had been too pointed, too confident. He knew something, or thought he did, and that made him dangerous. That night, Cole called a meeting in the bunkhouse. All the hands gathered, and he stood before them with the telegram in his hand. "Most of you have heard the rumors about Eliza, about warrants and criminal charges. I want you to hear the truth directly." He read the telegram aloud, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "She's innocent. She's been innocent all along. And anyone who says otherwise is either misinformed or lying deliberately." Joey spoke up from the back. "What about Silas? He's been telling everyone in Prescott that she's trouble." "Silas is angry because he didn't get to buy a woman like she was property," Cole said bluntly. "He's angry because I outbid him and then set her free. Everything since then has been revenge, nothing more." Pete, the skeptical older hand, cleared his throat. "Boss, no disrespect to Miss Hart, but Silas ain't the type to let go. If he's this worked up, he's planning something. I know, which is why we're implementing new protocols. Nobody works alone in remote sections. Eliza doesn't go anywhere without an escort. We keep watch at night, rotating shifts. And if anyone sees Silas or his men on Triple Bar land, you report it immediately. You expecting an attack? Hank asked. I'm expecting Silas to be Silas, which means I'm preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. After the meeting, Eliza found herself alone with Cole on the porch of the main house. The night was cool, stars brilliant overhead, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me, for standing with me." "You don't have to thank me for basic decency, Eliza." "Yes, I do, because it's not as basic as you think. Most men wouldn't have done what you did. Most men would have walked away, or worse, would have used the situation for their own advantage." Cole was quiet for a moment, staring out at the dark rangeland. "My sister Sarah, when she ran, I've thought about it 1,000 times. What I could have done differently, how I could have protected her better. I was young, didn't have the means or the courage to stand up to my father the way I should have." He turned to look at Eliza. "I can't save Sarah. She's gone. But I can make sure no other woman suffers the same fate if I have the power to stop it. That's not heroism, Eliza. That's just me living with my conscience." The raw honesty in his words made her throat tight. "She'd be proud of you, the man you've become." "Maybe. I hope so." He pushed off from the porch railing. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll hear back from the territorial marshal, and with luck this whole mess will be officially closed." But luck, it seemed, was not on their side. The attack came 2 nights later, just after sunset, when the light was failing and shadows grew long. Eliza was in her cabin reviewing correspondence when she heard the first shouts. She grabbed her Winchester and threw open the door to chaos. 3 riders' faces covered with bandanas were charging through the ranch yard. One was making for the barn, another heading toward the corrals, but the third was riding straight for her cabin. Eliza raised her rifle, but before she could fire, Joey appeared from nowhere and tackled the rider from his horse. The man hit the ground hard, and his bandana slipped, revealing a face Eliza didn't recognize, one of Silas's hired guns from the social. He scrambled for his weapon, but Joey was faster, disarming him with a move that spoke of hard-won experience. Gunfire erupted from near the barn. Eliza's heart seized. Cole was there. She ran toward the sound rifle ready and found Cole and Hank pinned down behind a water trough, trading shots with the second rider. Without thinking, Eliza took aim at the rider's horse, not to kill it, but to spook it. Her shot struck the ground near its hooves, and the animal reared, throwing its rider. The man hit the packed earth and rolled, coming up with his gun drawn, but now he was facing 3 rifles instead of 2. "Drop it," Cole commanded, his voice iron. The man hesitated, then let his weapon fall. The third rider, seeing his companions caught, wheeled his horse and fled into the darkness, but not before Hank got off a shot that caught him in the shoulder. The man swayed but kept riding, disappearing into the night. Ranch hands swarmed the yard, securing the 2 captured attackers. Cole moved to Eliza, his eyes scanning her for injury. "You all right?" "I'm fine. You?" "Fine." He turned to the captured men. "Tie them up. Someone ride for the sheriff." As the hands secured the prisoners, Cole approached the first one, the man Joey had unhorsed. He yanked down the bandana, fully revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. "Who sent you?" Cole demanded. The man spat. "Go to hell." Cole's expression didn't change. "You're facing attempted kidnapping, assault, possibly murder, if anyone had been killed. That's a hanging offense. Or you can tell me who paid you, and maybe the judge goes easier." The second prisoner, the one Eliza had unhorsed, spoke up, his voice shaking. "It was Crowell, Silas Crowell. He paid us $50 each to grab the woman and bring her to Red Butte." "Shut your mouth, Davis," the first man snarled, but Davis was already talking fear, loosening his tongue. "He said she was a criminal, said there was a warrant, said we'd be doing the law a favor. We didn't know, we thought it was legal." "Legal?" Hank's voice dripped contempt. "Masked men attacking a ranch at night trying to kidnap a woman. What part of that sounds legal? Davis had no answer. Cole turned to Joey. Good work tonight. Fast thinking, brave action. Joey flushed with pride despite the circumstances. Just doing my job, boss. As they waited for the sheriff, Eliza examined the captured men's horses. On one saddle she found a distinctive piece of cloth red silk, expensive exactly like the bandanas Silas was known to wear. She showed it to Cole and his expression hardened. Evidence, he said. Direct connection to Silas. Sheriff Turner arrived an hour later with 2 deputies. He took statements from everyone, examined the evidence, and questioned the prisoners. Davis sang like a canary, implicating Silas in explicit detail. The meeting at the saloon, the payment in gold coins, the instructions to grab Eliza without killing anyone if possible. I'll need to bring Crowell in for questioning. Turner said, his earlier reluctance replaced by grim determination. This crosses the line from slander to felony. You folks did good tonight stopping this. But when Turner rode to Red Butte the next morning, Silas was gone. The saloon was locked up, his room at the boarding house cleared out, and his horse missing from the livery. He'd fled probably the moment his hired men failed to return. He's running, Turner reported back at the ranch. Got word he was seen heading toward Prescott, then maybe on to the territorial line. I've wired the marshals, put out a warrant for his arrest. He won't get far. But Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Men like Silas didn't give up easily, and the fact that he'd fled meant he was regrouping, not surrendering. The next week brought unexpected developments. First, the express mail from Uncle James arrived, a thick packet of legal documents, affidavits, and copies of her grandfather's will, all proving beyond doubt that she was the legitimate heir, that Gerald's claims were fraudulent, and that she'd broken no laws in leaving Boston. Sheriff Turner filed the documents officially, and the Territorial Attorney's Office issued a formal statement clearing Eliza of all allegations. It should have been the end of it. Then came the second development, a letter from Uncle James delivered by special courier. Eliza opened it in the office, Cole standing nearby. As she read, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock to something like wonder. What is it? Cole asked. Uncle James. He's offering me a position in San Francisco, chief accountant for his law firm, managing all their financial affairs. The salary is, she looked up, eyes wide, 3 times what you're paying me, with a house provided, full benefits, and a partnership track. Cole's face was carefully neutral. That's an incredible opportunity. It is. Eliza looked down at the letter again. He says I'd be safe there, respected, that San Francisco is more progressive about women in business, that I could build a real career, a real life. And you should take it, Cole said, his voice even. It's everything you deserve, Eliza, everything you've earned. She studied him, trying to read the emotion beneath his controlled expression. Is that what you want? For me to leave? What I want doesn't matter. This is your life, your choice, always has been. It matters to me. The words were out before she could stop them, and they hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Cole met her eyes, and for the first time she saw past his careful control to the conflict beneath. Then I'll be honest. I don't want you to leave. The ranch runs better with you here. The books are finally in order, and you've become... He paused, choosing words carefully. You've become part of this place, part of what we're building. But that's selfish on my part. You shouldn't base your decision on what I want or what the ranch needs. You should base it on what Eliza Hart wants for her own life. It was the right answer, the respectful answer, and it made the decision somehow harder. Eliza set the letter aside and looked around the office at the neat ledgers, the organized files, the system she'd built from chaos. Then she looked at Cole, at the man who'd stood beside her, protected her, respected her, and never once asked her to be anything other than herself. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. But time, it turned out, was something they didn't have much of. The wire came 3 days later, this time from the Territorial Marshal's office in Prescott. Silas Crowell had been spotted crossing into New Mexico territory had evaded capture and was now officially a fugitive. The marshal was coordinating with New Mexico authorities, but the territory was vast, and a determined man could disappear for years. Worse, there were rumors, unconfirmed but troubling, that Silas had been heard talking in a border town, drunk and angry, swearing revenge on the Rourke Ranch and that uppity woman. Cole increased security again. The hands worked in pairs, even for simple tasks. Eliza was never alone, though she chafed at the restriction. And at night, guards walked the perimeter in shifts, eyes scanning the darkness for threats that might never come. A week passed, then two. The tension began to ease slightly as routine set in. Eliza threw herself into her work partly to be useful and partly to avoid thinking about the decision she had to make. San Francisco represented safety, opportunity, respect. The triple bar represented what risk, certainly. An uncertain future, but also community purpose, and if she was honest with herself, something she was afraid to name. It was Wong who finally forced the issue. He found her in the office late one afternoon bringing tea, as he often did. "You still thinking about San Francisco?" he asked, setting down the cup. "How did you—" "Small ranch. People talk. Also, you get very quiet when thinking hard, and you've been very quiet for 2 weeks. He settled into the chair across from her. "You want advice from old man who's made many choices about where to belong." Eliza smiled despite herself. "I could use some wisdom. San Francisco is good city. Safe, many opportunities for Chinese and for women who think different. You could do well there." He paused, sipping his own tea. "But doing well and being happy are not always same thing. Question is not where you will succeed. You will succeed anywhere. Question is where you will be yourself fully without apology. And where is that?" Wong's smile was enigmatic. "Only you know answer, but I tell you this, I could work many places. Many restaurants, many rich houses in San Francisco would hire Chinese cook. But here at Triple Bar, I am not just cook, I am Wong. Mr. Cole, he sees me, respects me, values my opinion on things beyond just food. The hands, they learn my name, learn my language, become friends." He met her eyes. "That is rare. That is precious. That is worth considering when you make choice." After he left, Eliza sat in silence, his words echoing. Where could she be fully herself? In San Francisco, she'd be successful, yes, but she'd also be careful. She'd have to navigate social politics, manage perceptions, always be aware of her position as a woman in a male-dominated profession. It would be better than most places, but still constrained. Here at the Triple Bar, she wore trousers every day without comment. She made decisions about ranch finances that Cole implemented without question. She'd earned respect not by fitting into expectations, but by proving competence on her own terms. The hands called her Miss Hart and meant it as a title of respect, not condescension. Joey looked up to her. Hank consulted her on decisions. Wong brought her tea and wisdom in equal measure. And Cole stood beside her as an equal, neither above nor below, just beside. That night, unable to sleep, Eliza walked out to the porch of her cabin. The ranch was quiet except for the night guard's distant footsteps and the usual sounds of horses and cattle. The stars were brilliant, the air cool and clean, and somewhere in the darkness an owl called. She heard footsteps and turned to find Cole approaching, also unable to sleep, it seemed. "Couldn't rest?" he asked. "Too much thinking." He joined her, leaning against the porch railing. "About San Francisco, about everything." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. If I stay, what happens? Not with the job. I know the work, I know the arrangement. But what happens with this?" She gestured between them at the undefined thing that had grown over months of working together, standing together, building something together. Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, honest. "I don't know. I care about you, Eliza, more than I probably should given our working relationship, but I won't use that to pressure you into staying. If you go to San Francisco, I'll miss you and I'll wish you well. If you stay, we'll figure out what this is together at a pace that works for both of us. No expectations, no obligations, just possibility. Possibility, Eliza repeated. It was such a simple word, but it contained everything: hope, risk, potential for joy or heartbreak. What if I told you I'm afraid not of staying, but of wanting to stay for the wrong reasons, of choosing this because of you instead of for myself? Then I'd say, trust yourself. You've made hard choices before leaving Boston, surviving Red Butte, building a life here from nothing. You know the difference between dependence and partnership, between running from something and running toward something. He turned to face her fully. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your decision based on what Eliza Hart wants for Eliza Hart's life. Not what I want, not what your uncle wants, not what society expects, just what you want. It was once again the perfect answer, the respectful answer, the answer that put her autonomy first, even above his own desires. And it was that answer more than anything else that helped her see clearly. She wanted to stay, not because she was dependent on Cole or the ranch, but because she'd found something here she'd never had before, a place where she could be completely herself, where her competence was valued over her conformity, where her choices were respected, where she was building something that mattered. San Francisco offered safety and success. The Triple Bar offered belonging. "I'm staying," she said, and the words felt right, solid, true. Cole's expression transformed: relief, joy, hope, all flickering across his usually controlled features. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I'll write to Uncle James tomorrow, thank him for the offer, but decline. This is where I belong. This is home." He smiled, genuine and unguarded. "Welcome home, then." They stood together in the starlight, and Eliza felt something settle inside her. A sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Silas was still out there, still a threat. The work would continue, the ranch would demand everything she had to give, and the future was still uncertain in 1,000 ways. But tonight she had made her choice, and it was the right one. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm rolling in from the west. Cole glanced at the horizon where lightning flickered. "Weather's changing." "Storm coming," Eliza agreed, but she wasn't afraid. Whatever came next, whatever challenges or dangers the future held, she would face them here at the Triple Bar with people who stood beside her. She had found her ground, and she would hold it. Together. The storm broke just before dawn, rain hammering the ranch buildings with the fury of a long, dry spell finally ending. Eliza woke to the sound of water drumming on her cabin roof and allowed herself a moment of contentment. She'd written to Uncle James the previous evening, declining his generous offer with gratitude and explaining that she'd found her place. The letter sat sealed on her desk, ready to post, and with it went any uncertainty about her future. She dressed quickly and made her way through the rain to the main house, where the smell of Wong's coffee and bacon drew the early risers. Cole was already there, studying weather patterns with Hank over steaming cups. "Creek's going to flood if this keeps up," Hank was saying. "We should move the cattle from the south pasture to higher ground." "Agreed. Take Joey and Pete, get them moved before noon." Cole looked up as Eliza entered, and his smile was brief but warm. "Morning. Storm wake you." The storm and the knowledge that those ledgers won't balance themselves. She poured coffee, savoring the warmth. "Though I imagine accounting takes a back seat to flooded pastures." "Everything takes a back seat to keeping the herd safe," Cole confirmed. "But once the immediate crisis is handled, I need you to review the emergency fund allocation. If we're facing property damage, I want to know exactly where we stand financially." It was this, the easy partnership, the mutual respect, the way he trusted her judgment without question, that had made her decision to stay so clear. Eliza settled at the table with her coffee, listening to the men plan their day, occasionally offering input when financial considerations arose. The rain continued through the morning, turning the ranch yard into a maze of mud and rushing water. By midday, the hands had successfully moved the cattle, though they returned soaked and exhausted. Wong had hot food and coffee waiting, and the bunkhouse became a refuge of warmth and dry clothes. Eliza was in the office tallying emergency reserves when Joey burst through the door, dripping and wild-eyed. "Miss Hart, we got trouble. Big trouble." She was on her feet immediately. "What kind of trouble?" "Riders. Maybe 6 or 7 coming up from the south. They're not flying any colors, keeping to the tree line, but Pete recognized one of them through the rain." Joey's voice dropped. "It's Crowell. Silas Crowell's with them." Eliza's blood went cold. She grabbed her Winchester and followed Joey out, finding Cole already organizing the hands in the yard. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle visibility, improved but still limited. 6 riders minimum, Cole was saying. Probably armed, definitely hostile. "We're not starting a fight, but we're finishing one if it comes to us." "Eliza." He turned as she approached. "Get in the house." "No. This isn't negotiable. If Silas is here, he's here for you. Which is exactly why I need to be visible to face this head-on instead of cowering." She checked her rifle with practiced efficiency. "I'm not hiding anymore, Cole. Not from Silas, not from anyone." His jaw tightened, but he recognized the futility of arguing. "Fine, but you stay between Hank and me, and if shooting starts, you get to cover." "Understood." "Understood." They formed a defensive line across the yard, 12 armed men and 1 armed woman presenting a united front. Through the rain-dimmed light, Eliza could see the riders approaching, taking their time, confident in their numbers. Silas rode at the front, his thin face set in an expression of righteous fury. The men with him were rough types, hired guns by the look of them, each wearing iron on their hips and carrying rifles across their saddles. They reined in 20 yards from the ranch's defensive line, and for a moment only, the rain made sound. "That's far enough, Silas," Cole called out. "You're trespassing on private property, and you're wanted for questioning on felony charges. Turn around and ride out, or we'll hold you for the sheriff." Silas's laugh was bitter. "The sheriff, the same sheriff who let this woman walk free on manufactured evidence, the same law that protects criminals and punishes decent folk for trying to maintain order." He pointed at Eliza. "That woman is a fraud, a thief, and a corrupter of good men. I've got witnesses, I've got proof, and I'm here to see justice done." "Your proof is as fake as your warrant," Eliza shot back, "and your witnesses are hired thugs who'll say anything for money. You're finished, Silas. The law's caught up to you." "The law," Silas spat, "is what men make it. And out here, away from corrupt sheriffs and fancy lawyers, real justice is what matters." He addressed the ranch hands directly. "You men know what's right. You know a woman's got no business keeping books wearing trousers, acting like she's equal to men. You know this Rourke's been bewitched, led astray by feminine wiles and false righteousness. Help me set things right, and there's gold in it for you." The yard was silent except for rain. Eliza held her breath, wondering if Silas's appeal to prejudice would find purchase among the hands. These were frontier men raised on traditional values, and Silas was offering them money to enforce those values. Then Joey stepped forward, rifle raised. "Miss Hart's done nothing but honest work. She's earned her place here, and you've got no right to question it." Pete followed, moving to stand beside Joey. "The boy's right. Don't matter what she wears or what work she does. She does it honest, and she does it well. That's enough for me." One by one, the other hands closed ranks, forming a tighter line. Wong emerged from the cookhouse with his own rifle, taking his place without a word. Even the newest hand, a quiet man named Rodriguez, who rarely spoke, planted himself firmly in the defensive formation. Silas's face darkened with rage. "Fools, all of you. You'd throw away your souls for a woman in trousers." "We'd stand by our own," Hank said quietly. "Miss Hart's triple bar and triple bar takes care of its own. Now you've got 2 choices: ride out peaceful, or we remove you by force." For a heartbeat, Eliza thought Silas might actually retreat. His hired guns were looking nervous, outnumbered, and facing determined opposition, but then his hand moved toward his weapon, and everything happened at once. "Down!" Cole shouted, and the yard erupted in gunfire. Eliza hit the mud as bullets whined overhead. She rolled to the cover of a water trough, coming up with her Winchester ready. One of Silas's men was aiming at Cole, and she fired without thinking, her shot taking him in the shoulder and spinning him from his saddle. The firefight was brief but intense. The triple bar hands had cover position and determination on their side. Silas's hired guns, realizing they'd been sold a bad bill of goods, began to scatter. Two threw down their weapons immediately. Another tried to flee and took a shot from Hank that dropped his horse. Within minutes, it was over 3 of Silas's men captured. 2 fled, and Silas himself. Eliza's heart sank as she realized Silas was gone. In the chaos, he'd wheeled his horse and disappeared into the tree line, abandoning his men to their fate. "He ran," Joey said, disbelief in his voice. "The coward actually ran." Cole was already organizing pursuit. "Hank, Joey, Pete, with me. The rest of you secure the prisoners and get them tied up for the sheriff. Wong, check everyone for injuries." "Eliza." "I'm coming with you," she said, already moving toward the horses. "Eliza, no. He's running because of me. This ends today, Cole. One way or another it ends." There was no time to argue. They mounted quickly, 4 riders against 1 fleeing man, and plunged into the rain-soaked forest. The trail was easy to follow. At first, broken branches churned mud, the clear path of a man fleeing in panic rather than strategy. But as they rode deeper into the woods, the trail began to split, double back, confuse. Silas knew this country, Eliza realized. He'd planned escape routes, probably scouted them during his weeks of obsessing over revenge. "Split up," Cole ordered. "Pairs, Joey with Pete, Hank with me. Eliza." He saw her expression and modified, "Eliza with me. Stay close, stay alert. He's desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." They moved through the forest, rain dripping from pine branches, the ground treacherous beneath their horses' hooves. Eliza kept her rifle-ready, eyes scanning the shadows. Every movement could be Silas, every shadow a threat. A shot rang out, and Cole's horse screamed and reared. He managed to stay mounted, but barely, and Eliza saw blood on the animal's flank. A grazing wound, not fatal, but enough to spook the beast. "There," she pointed to a rocky outcropping 50 yards ahead, where she'd seen the muzzle flash. Cole was already dismounting, getting his panicked horse under control, so Eliza did the only thing she could. She charged. Her mare surged forward, hooves pounding on wet earth, and she fired twice at the outcropping, as she rode not to hit but to suppress. Silas popped up to return fire, and his shot went wild as he jerked back from her covering fire. By the time she reached the rocks, Silas was scrambling away on foot. His horse must have thrown him or fled. Eliza dismounted and pursued her, boots slipping on wet stone, but her grip on the Winchester steady. "Stop running, Silas!" she shouted. "It's over!" He whirled, bringing up his pistol, and for a frozen moment, they faced each other across 10 feet of rain-soaked ground. His face was twisted with hate and fear in equal measure, his thin frame shaking with rage. "It's not over," he snarled. "It's never over. Women like you destroy everything. Natural order, proper society, everything our fathers built. You're a disease, and I'm the cure." "I'm a woman who made her own choices," Eliza said, her rifle trained on his center mass. "That's not a disease, that's freedom, and it terrifies you because it means you have no power over me. I have this." He gestured with the pistol. "I have the power to end your corruption right now." "Then do it," she challenged, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "Pull that trigger, prove you're exactly the monster I said you were, or put it down and face justice like a man instead of a coward." His hand trembled in decision and fury warring across his features. Behind her, Eliza heard running footsteps, Cole coming, drawn by the shots. Silas heard them too, and something in him snapped. "If I can't have justice, I'll have revenge." He fired, but his shaking hand ruined his aim. The bullet went wide, and Eliza's return shot was pure reflex, pure survival instinct. She aimed for his gun arm, not to kill but to disable, and her bullet struck true. Silas's pistol flew from his hand, and he crumpled to the ground, clutching his wounded arm and screaming. Cole reached them seconds later, rifle ready, but the threat was over. Silas writhed on the ground, his arm bleeding, but not dangerously, so his face a mask of pain and defeated rage. "It's done," Eliza said, and her voice shook slightly as adrenaline began to fade. "It's finally done." Cole moved to secure Silas, binding his good arm and wrapping the wounded one to slow the bleeding. The man's threats had dissolved into whimpering curses. All his righteous fury evaporated in the face of real consequences. Hank, Joey, and Pete emerged from the trees, having heard the shots. They took in the scene. Silas defeated Eliza, standing with her smoking rifle, Cole securing the prisoner, and Joey actually grinned. "Miss Hart, that was some shooting." "My uncle taught me to shoot straight," she replied, managing a weak smile. "But I never wanted to shoot a man." "You didn't have a choice," Cole said firmly. "He came here for violence, and you responded with appropriate force. The law will see it that way." They rode back to the ranch with Silas bound and barely conscious. Across his horse, his hired thugs already secured and awaiting the sheriff. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight was breaking through the clouds, painting the wet world in shades of silver and gold. Sheriff Turner arrived 2 hours later with deputies drawn by the messenger Wong had sent. He surveyed the captured men, took statements from everyone, examined the evidence, and finally nodded with grim satisfaction. "This is enough," he said. "Crowell's going to face charges for attempted kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, and a half-dozen other crimes. His men will turn on him to save themselves, and he'll be lucky if he doesn't hang." "And Eliza?" Cole asked. "She shot him in self-defense." Turner looked at Eliza with something approaching respect. "From what I hear, she showed restraint most men wouldn't have managed. Could have killed him, aimed to disable instead. That's justified defense, clear as day. No charges, Miss Hart. You're in the clear." The words washed over Eliza like benediction. In the clear, not just legally, but truly, finally free of Silas's threats and Gerald's lies and Red Butte's judgment. She was free. As the sheriff loaded his prisoners into a wagon, Cole found Eliza standing in the yard, staring at the clearing sky. "You all right?" he asked quietly. "I shot a man today." "You protected yourself, protected all of us." I know it was necessary, know it was right, but it still feels." She searched for the word heavy. Cole nodded, understanding. It should feel heavy. The day it doesn't, the day taking a life becomes easy, that's when you've lost something essential. The weight means you're still human, still compassionate, still yourself. They stood together in the aftermath, and gradually the ranch came back to life around them. Wong called everyone to lunch, the hands began cleaning up the battle damage, and normalcy reasserted itself with the stubborn persistence of daily routine. That evening, the entire ranch gathered in the cookhouse for a dinner that felt like celebration and wake combined. They'd survived, they'd won, but the cost had been real. Joey's arm was bandaged from a grazing wound, Pete had bruised ribs, and everyone carried the weight of having faced death and dealt it. But they'd also proven something, that they were a real community, a family bound not by blood, but by choice and shared values. When tested, they'd stood together. When threatened, they'd protected their own. And their own included a woman in trousers who kept books and shot straight. To Miss Hart, Joey raised his cup and the others followed, for standing her ground. To the triple bar, Eliza countered on, for being ground worth standing on. They drank, and in that moment Eliza felt the last piece of her past fall away. She wasn't running from Boston anymore. She wasn't surviving Red Butte's judgment. She was simply Eliza Hart, bookkeeper member of the Triple Bar family woman who'd found her place and fought to keep it. After dinner, as the hands dispersed to their evening routines, Cole walked Eliza to her cabin. The night was clear now, stars brilliant in the rain-washed sky, the air cool and clean. "The territorial attorney's office sent word," Cole said. "They want a formal statement from you about everything Red Butte, Silas, the attacks, all of it. It'll go into the official record, clear your name completely in every jurisdiction. When, week from now in Prescott, they're also talking about charges against Red Butte's mayor for conducting an illegal auction. Seems your case has opened up a whole investigation into civil rights violations." Eliza felt a surge of satisfaction. Good. Maybe it'll make them think twice before they auction off the next woman who offends their sensibilities. "Maybe it'll change things," Cole agreed. "Not everywhere, not need overnight, but maybe it's a start." They reached her cabin and Eliza turned to face him. "Thank you for everything, for buying my freedom, for giving me work, for standing beside me through all of this." "You don't have to thank me, Eliza. We're partners, remember?" "Partners," she echoed, and the word felt right, felt solid. "Is that all we are, Cole?" The question hung between them, vulnerable and honest. Cole was quiet for a moment, then stepped closer, not crowding her, but closing the distance. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "I know I care about you more than an employer should care about an employee. I know I admire your courage, your competence, your refusal to be anything other than yourself. I know that when you said you were staying, I felt relief so profound it scared me." "I'm scared too," Eliza admitted. "Dad, I've spent so long fighting for independence that the idea of choosing connection, of letting someone matter to me, it's terrifying." "So we take it slow," Cole suggested. "We figure it out as we go. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." There was that word again, possibility, the space between what was and what might be, the place where choices lived. "I'd like that," Eliza said. Cole smiled, and in the starlight he looked younger, less burdened. "Then that's what we'll do." He didn't kiss her, didn't make any grand romantic gesture. He simply touched her hand briefly, a promise of patience and respect, then walked away toward the main house. Eliza watched him go, feeling the ghost of his touch on her fingers and the warmth of possibility in her chest. Inside her cabin, she lit a lamp and settled at her small desk. There were ledgers to review, correspondence to manage, the ordinary work of running a ranch's books. But tonight it felt like more than work. It felt like building something, creating something that mattered. Through her window she could see the lights of the bunkhouse, hear the distant laughter of the hands settling in for the night. Wong was humming in the cookhouse, cleaning up. A horse nickered in the corral, the ordinary sounds of home. Eliza opened her ledger and began to work, and for the first time in her life she felt no urge to run, no need to defend, no fear of tomorrow. She was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was. The past was behind her. Silas would face justice. Gerald's lies had been exposed. Red Butte's judgment no longer mattered. Ahead lay the future, uncertain in its details, but clear in its direction. A future built on respect and partnership, on competence and choice, on the radical notion that a woman in trousers could keep books, shoot straight, stand her ground, and be valued for all of it. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in the distance thunder rumbled, another storm coming, but she wasn't afraid. She never would be again. 1 year later, Eliza stood at the same window of her cabin, though it was no longer quite so small or quite so plain. Cole had helped her add a bookshelf, a proper desk, and curtains that Wong's wife had sewn from fabric, the color of desert sage. The room reflected who she'd become, comfortable, purposeful, undeniably hers. Outside, the Triple Bar thrummed with the organized chaos of a working ranch at its peak. The ledgers showed profits up 30% from the previous year, a fact that filled Eliza with quiet pride. She'd implemented new systems, renegotiated contracts, found efficiencies that translated directly to the ranch's prosperity. More importantly, she'd earned trust not just from Cole, but from every hand who now came to her with questions about pay concerns, about expenses, or ideas for improvement. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in." Joey entered looking far more confident than the nervous 19-year-old who'd helped her clear this cabin a year ago. He was 20 now, hardened by work and responsibility, and Cole had just promoted him to assistant foreman under Hank. "Miss Hart, the supply order came in from Prescott. Numbers match what you projected, but there's something extra." He handed her an envelope with an official seal. "Came addressed to you, care of the ranch." Eliza's heart quickened as she recognized the territorial attorney's seal. She opened it carefully, Joey waiting with barely contained curiosity. As she read, a smile spread across her face. "It's over," she said softly. "Truly over. Silas has been sentenced 15 years in territorial prison. Gerald's been fined and barred from managing any family trusts. And Red Butte," she looked up, eyes bright, "Red Butte's mayor has been removed from office and charged with civil rights violations. They're implementing new territorial guidelines about auctions and public punishment." Joey's whoop of joy brought Hank to the door, then Pete, then others, until her small cabin was crowded with ranch hands, celebrating justice finally completely served. "That calls for a celebration," Hank declared. "Wong's been saving a special dinner for good news. Tonight we feast proper." As the hands dispersed to spread the word, Eliza found herself alone with the letter, reading it again to make sure it was real. Every legal threat, every false charge, every attempt to control or diminish her, all of it officially permanently defeated. She was free in ways she'd never even imagined possible a year ago. Cole found her there an hour later, still holding the letter, tears streaming down her face that she made no effort to hide. "Eliza," he crossed to her, immediately concerned, etching his features. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she managed, laughing through the tears. "Everything's right. For the first time in my entire life, everything's actually right." He read the letter over her shoulder, and she felt his relief in the way his shoulders relaxed, the breath he released. "Justice," he said quietly. "Real justice." "More than that," Eliza said, turning to face him. "Vindication. Not just for me, but for every woman who's been punished for choosing herself, for being competent, for refusing to fit into boxes built by other people's fears." "You did that," Cole said. "By standing your ground, by refusing to run or hide, you changed things." "We did that," she corrected. "I couldn't have done any of it without this place, without you, without people willing to stand beside me instead of over me." The space between them felt charged with something unnamed, something that had been growing steadily over the months of working side by side, building trust, creating partnership. Cole lifted his hand as if to touch her face, then hesitated, always respectful, always waiting for her permission. Eliza closed the distance herself, rising on her toes to kiss him, brief, sweet, and full of promise. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper, warmer. "Eliza Hart," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. "I'm not choosing you because I need protection or security. I'm choosing you because I want to build a life with someone who sees me as an equal, who respects my choices, who stands beside me instead of trying to control me. I'm choosing partnership, Cole, if you want it too." His answer was another kiss, deeper this time, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathless and smiling. "I want it," he said. "I want you, want us, want everything we can build together. But Eliza, I need you to know I'll never ask you to be anything other than who you are. Trousers, ledgers, rifles, all of it. You're perfect exactly as you are." "I know," she said, and meant it. "That's why I'm saying yes." The celebration that night was raucous and joyful. Wong had indeed been saving provisions for a special occasion, and he outdid himself with a feast that had the hands groaning with satisfaction. There was music. Joey had a surprising talent with the fiddle and dancing and laughter that echoed across the ranch. Catherine Monroe had ridden out from Prescott with her intended a kind-faced carpenter named James, and she embraced Eliza with genuine warmth. "I heard about the sentencing," she said. "The whole territory's talking about it. You've become something of a symbol, you know. Women everywhere are asking why they can't wear practical clothing, why they can't do work they're qualified for. You've started something important." "I just wanted to live my life," Eliza protested. "That's all any of us want," Catherine replied. "But sometimes living your life authentically becomes revolutionary without you even trying. You should be proud." Mrs. Hollister was conspicuously absent, but several other Prescott women had come drawn by curiosity or support or both. Eliza watched them. Watching her, saw the questions in their eyes, the wondering if they too could make different choices. She didn't have answers for them. Every woman's path was her own, but she could offer example proof that choosing yourself didn't mean choosing loneliness. As the evening wore on and the dancing grew more spirited, Cole pulled Eliza aside to the quiet porch of the main house. The stars were brilliant overhead, the same stars that had witnessed her arrival a year ago, frightened and defiant and desperately hoping for something better. "I have something for you," Cole said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box, and Eliza's breath caught. "Before you panic, this isn't what you think. Open it." Inside was a key, brass, well-made, clearly new. Eliza looked at him questioningly. "It's for the ranch office," he explained. "Your office now, officially. I'm making you full partner in the Triple Bar, Eliza. Equal ownership, equal say in all decisions, equal share of profits and risks. I've already had the papers drawn up by a lawyer in Prescott. If you agree, we'll be partners in business as well as," he smiled, "whatever else we're building together." Eliza stared at the key, understanding the magnitude of what he was offering. Partnership wasn't just romantic words. It was legal reality, financial commitment, a recognition of her contribution and her worth that went beyond employment. It was trust made tangible. "Cole, this is enormous. Are you certain?" "Completely certain. The ranch is more profitable than it's ever been because of your management. The hands respect you, the buyers trust your numbers, and the books actually make sense for the first time in years. But more than that, you've made this place better. You've built a culture of respect and competence over prejudice. You belong here, Eliza, not as an employee, but as an owner." She closed her hand around the key, feeling its weight. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I accept. Partners." They shook hands, formally sealing the business arrangement. Then Cole pulled her close for a kiss that was anything but businesslike. In the distance, the party continued, but here, in their quiet moment, they were building something that would outlast any celebration. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. The partnership papers were filed officially, and Eliza's name appeared on the Triple Bar deed alongside Cole's. The ranch hands took the news with easy acceptance. Most had already thought of her as co-owner anyway, given how much authority Cole had delegated to her. But the real surprise came one Sunday morning when Cole found Eliza reviewing contracts and gently took the papers from her hands. "Leave those," he said. "We're going to Prescott." "Cole, I have work." "It's Sunday. The work will keep. Come on." Intrigued, she let him lead her to the wagon where Wong had already packed a basket and was smiling mysteriously. The ride to Prescott was pleasant, Cole refusing to explain their purpose, and Eliza found herself enjoying the mystery. They stopped at the community hall where an unusual number of people seemed to be gathered for a Sunday. Catherine was there and Sheriff Turner, and to Eliza's shock, even a few women from Red Butte, not the mayor's wife or Mrs. Hollister's cronies, but women who'd watched her auction with troubled eyes and apparently never forgotten. Cole led her inside and Eliza gasped. The hall had been decorated simply but beautifully, wildflowers in mason jars, bunting in desert colors, and at the front a minister she recognized from town. "Cole Rourke," she said slowly. "What is this?" He took her hand, suddenly nervous in a way she'd rarely seen. "It's a wedding if you want it to be. I know we've only been courting a few months, and I know you value your independence, and I swear I'll never take that from you. But Eliza, I love you. I love your courage and your competence and your refusal to be anything other than yourself. I want to build a life with you, a real life as partners in every sense. So I'm asking, will you marry me?" Eliza's mind reeled. A wedding here now, with their community gathered to witness. It was sudden, yes, but then again, hadn't she already made her choice? Hadn't she already decided that Cole was someone worth building a future with? "I have conditions," she said, and saw relief flash in his eyes that she was negotiating rather than refusing. "Name them." "I keep my own name professionally. The partnership papers stay as they are, Eliza Hart, co-owner. I keep wearing trousers when practical. I keep my work, my independence, my choices." "Agreed to all of it," Cole said immediately. "Anything else?" She looked around at the gathered people, friends, allies, witnesses to her journey from auction block to this moment of genuine choice. "I want to wear that riding skirt Catherine made, not a traditional wedding dress. And I want Wong to stand with us as a witness." Cole's smile was brilliant. "Done. So is that a yes?" "That's a yes, Cole Rourke. I'll marry you, build a life with you, be your partner in all things. But I'm doing it as myself, fully and completely myself. I wouldn't have it any other way." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Eliza wore the practical riding skirt Catherine had sewn, a compromise between traditional femininity and functional practicality that felt perfectly like her. Wong stood beside Cole as a witness, tears streaming down his weathered face, while Catherine stood with Eliza. The vows they exchanged were traditional in structure, but radical in content. When the minister asked if Cole would honor and cherish, Eliza, Cole added, and respect her autonomy, support her choices, and stand beside her as an equal partner. When Eliza was asked if she would honor and cherish Cole, she added, and trust him, work alongside him, and build something worthy of both our efforts. The minister, a progressive man who'd been troubled by Red Butte's auction, smiled and pronounced them married with visible pleasure at officiating a union built on such clear mutual respect. The celebration afterward was genuine and joyful. Even Sheriff Turner offered congratulations, noting that it was good to see something positive come from the troubles of the previous year. The women from Red Butte approached Eliza hesitantly, and one, a quiet woman named Sarah who worked at the general store, spoke for the group. "We wanted to apologize," she said, eyes downcast, "for not speaking up that day, for letting fear and convention silence us when we should have stood beside you." Eliza took her hand gently. "You're here now, that matters, and maybe next time when another woman faces judgment for being herself, you'll remember this and find your voices." "We will," Sarah promised. "Things are changing even in Red Butte. Slowly, but they're changing. Your courage started that." As the sun began to set, Cole and Eliza prepared to return to the ranch, their ranch now truly theirs, together. They rode side by side in the wagon, Wong following in a second wagon with the well-wisher's gifts and his carefully packed leftover food. "How do you feel?" Cole asked as the triple bar came into view, buildings golden in the evening light. "Complete," Eliza said honestly. "For the first time in my life, I feel like all the pieces fit. The work, I love the place I belong, the person I choose to stand beside. It's everything I never knew I could have." That night, they stood together on the porch of the main house, their house now looking out over the ranch. The hands had decorated the yard with lanterns in honor of the wedding, and the soft light created a magical atmosphere. "I've been thinking," Cole said, "about expansion. There's good grazing land to the east, and with the ranch doing so well financially, we could afford to acquire it. But I wanted your thoughts first. It's your decision as much as mine now." They talked through the possibilities, evaluating risks and benefits, making plans as true partners. It was everything Eliza had hoped for, not romance divorced from reality, but romance built on respect, on shared purpose, on genuine partnership. The months that followed brought new rhythms. Eliza discovered she was pregnant in early spring, and the news brought joy tempered with practical consideration. She continued her work through the pregnancy, modifying her schedule as needed, but never stopping completely. The ranch hands adapted seamlessly, Wong monitoring her nutrition with fierce dedication, and Cole supporting whatever choices she made about her own body and comfort. "Will our daughter be allowed to wear pants?" Eliza asked one evening, her hand on her swelling belly. Cole smiled, covering her hand with his. "Our child, daughter, or son will wear whatever they please and be whatever they choose to be. We'll teach them competence and compassion, courage and respect. The rest is up to them." The baby arrived in the autumn, a daughter with Eliza's determined chin and Cole's steady eyes. They named her Sarah for the sister whose loss had set Cole on the path that led to Eliza. Wong declared her the ranch's good luck charm, and the hands took turns carving toys and building a cradle that was a work of genuine craftsmanship. Eliza returned to the books. After a month, Sarah sleeping in a basket beside her desk, and found that motherhood hadn't diminished her capacity for the work she loved. If anything, it had deepened her commitment to building something lasting, something worthy of passing to the next generation. 2 years after the wedding, the territorial legislature passed new laws protecting women's rights to own property, conduct business, and dress practically for their work. The legislation was nicknamed Eliza's Law by the press, though Eliza insisted she'd simply lived her life and others had done the real work of changing policy. But Catherine, now serving on the Territorial Education Board, disagreed. "You showed what was possible," she told Eliza during a visit. "You proved that a woman could wear trousers, keep books, shoot straight, and still be respected. That example, that proof, it changed hearts and minds in ways legislation alone never could." Red Butte underwent its own transformation. A new mayor, elected on a platform of progress and dignity, formally apologized for the auction and established a community fund to support women seeking economic independence. Mrs. Hollister, confronted by changing social tides, grudgingly accepted that the world was evolving beyond her rigid conventions. Silas Crowell remained in prison, his fortune seized to pay restitution to his victims. Gerald Pemberton had relocated to New York, his reputation in Boston permanently damaged. The threats that had once seemed so overwhelming had been reduced to footnotes in a story that was fundamentally about resilience and choice. One evening, 5 years after that fateful auction in Red Butte, Eliza stood in the ranch office, expanded now to accommodate the growth of their enterprise. The Triple Bar was thriving, employing 40 hands running cattle across 3,000 acres and serving as a model for how ranches could operate with respect and competence as foundational values. Sarah, now 4 years old, played nearby with wooden blocks, building elaborate structures with the focused determination she'd inherited from both parents. She wore a practical dress that allowed her to climb and run her hair in braids, her face bright with intelligence and curiosity. Cole entered carrying their son, 2-year-old James, named for Eliza's uncle who'd supported her escape from Gerald's control. The boy was already showing signs of his father's steady temperament and his mother's sharp mind. "The new contract came through," Cole said, handing Eliza the papers. "The Denver buyer accepted our terms without negotiation. Your reputation for honest accounting and quality assurance has spread further than we realized." Eliza reviewed the contract with satisfaction. The Triple Bar had become known not just for quality cattle, but for ethical business practices, transparent accounting, and progressive labor policies. Other ranches were beginning to adopt similar approaches, and the entire territory was benefiting from the shift toward competence over convention. "We've built something good here," she said, looking around at the office, the ranch beyond the family they'd created. Something that matters. We have, Cole agreed, setting James down to play with his sister. He moved to stand behind Eliza, his hands on her shoulders, watching their children with visible contentment. And we're not done yet. There's still so much to build, so much to teach them, so many ways to make things better. That night, after the children were asleep and the ranch had settled into its evening rhythms, Eliza and Cole sat on their porch as they did most nights. The stars wheeled overhead unchanged since that first night when she'd arrived, desperate and defiant. But everything else had transformed. "Do you ever think about that day in Red Butte?" Cole asked. "The auction, sometimes," Eliza admitted. "But not with anger anymore. It was terrible, humiliating, wrong in every way, but it also led me here to this life, to you, to everything we've built. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I can't regret where it brought me." "You turned something meant to break you into a foundation for change," Cole observed. "That takes remarkable strength." "It takes support," Eliza corrected. "It takes people willing to stand beside you. It takes someone brave enough to bid $200 for a stranger's freedom and wise enough to actually set her free instead of claiming ownership." Cole smiled, remembering. "Best investment I ever made." "Partnership usually is," Eliza replied, taking his hand. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, a community they'd helped build lived and worked with dignity and respect. Ahead lay the future, uncertain in its details, but clear in its direction. From auction block to partnership, from humiliation to vindication, from survival to thriving, Eliza's journey had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of countless others. She'd proven that a woman could choose her own path, could wear what was practical, could do work she was qualified for, could demand respect instead of accepting condescension. And in doing so, she'd helped change the world, one choice, one stand, one partnership at a time. Little Sarah's voice called out from inside, a nightmare perhaps, and Eliza rose to go to her. Cole followed, and together they comforted their daughter, reminding her she was safe, she was loved, and she could be anything she chose to be. As Eliza tucked Sarah back into bed, smoothing her hair and whispering reassurance, she thought about the future this little girl would inherit. It wouldn't be perfect. Change was slow, resistance was real, and prejudice didn't disappear overnight. But it would be better. It would offer more choices, more freedom, more recognition that competence and character mattered more than conformity to arbitrary standards. "Mama," Sarah whispered sleepily, "when I grow up, can I keep books like you?" "You can do anything you want, sweetheart," Eliza replied. "Anything at all. You can keep books, or rope cattle, or teach school, or discover something no one's thought of yet. The world is opening up, and it's yours to choose from. Will people be mean to me if I choose different?" Eliza's heart clenched, but she answered honestly, "Some might be. Change scares people sometimes. But you'll have people who stand beside you just like I did. Your papa, your brother, your friends, and everyone who believes that people should be free to choose their own paths. You'll never be alone in your choices, Sarah. That's my promise to you." Sarah smiled and drifted back to sleep, secure in her mother's love and the promise of a future where her choices would be respected. Cole was waiting in the hallway, and together they walked back to their own room. The ranch was quiet now, settled for the night, and through the window Eliza could see the lights of the bunkhouse being extinguished one by one. "We did it," she said softly. "We built exactly what we set out to build. A place where people are valued for who they are, where competence matters more than convention, where respect is the foundation of everything." "We did," Cole agreed. "And we'll keep building, keep improving, keep showing what's possible when people choose partnership over power." Eliza looked at the man she'd married, the partner she'd chosen, the father of her children and co-builder of their shared dreams. He'd started as a stranger who'd made an impossible choice in a town square, and he'd become the foundation of a life beyond anything she'd imagined possible. "I love you," she said, simple and true. "I love you," he replied. "Today, tomorrow, and every day we continue building this life together." They held each other in the quiet of their room, and Eliza felt a peace so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was home, not just the ranch, not just the physical space, but the life they'd created, the values they'd established, the family they'd built, and the community they'd fostered. Years later, historians would point to the Triple Bar Ranch as a turning point in the territory's social evolution. They'd cite Eliza Hart's case as pivotal in changing laws and attitudes about women's rights. They'd note how one woman's refusal to accept injustice had rippled outward, inspiring others, shifting perspectives, and contributing to genuine progress. But on that quiet night, with her family sleeping safely and the ranch settled into peaceful darkness, Eliza didn't think about history or legacy. She thought about morning, when she'd wake to the smell of Wong's coffee and the sound of her children laughing. She'd go to her office and work on the books, make decisions as an equal partner, and build something worthy with every choice she made. She thought about the life she'd chosen and fought for and earned, a life of dignity, purpose, partnership, and love. And she smiled, content in the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged, exactly who she was meant to be, living exactly the life she'd chosen. Free, equal, home. The stars wheeled overhead, the ranch slept in peace, and tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But whatever came, Eliza Hart, bookkeeper, rancher, partner, mother, and woman who'd refused to be anything other than herself, would face it with courage, competence, and the certainty that she'd never stand alone. From the auction block where she'd been sold for wearing pants to the ranch, where she was valued for her mind and respected for her choices, her journey had proven a simple truth: strength isn't about standing over others, it's about standing beside them. Love isn't about control, it's about partnership. And freedom isn't given, it's claimed, defended, and shared with everyone brave enough to choose it. This was her story. This was their story. And it was just the beginning of everything they would build together. The end and the beginning forever intertwined under the vast Arizona sky.